It can't be a Slaysian Royale video if I don't reference ZP's verse from Thailand 3. Hi, my name is Matthew, and you might know me as BLackBoy on TikTok, BLackBoy on Blue Sky, it's BLackBoy on Twitter, BLack_Matt_ on Instagram, or you might not know me at all. And for those of you who don't, I am a content creator that talks all things World of Wonder and Drag Race, especially that of Drag Race outside of the US. And today, for my 20th video ever, you know I had to talk about it. Drag Race Philippines versus the world. Find the note, girl, find the note. Which it's actually called Slaysian Royale, but it's basically Drag Race Philippines versus the world. And I wanted to talk about it, so let's talk about it. First and foremost, a huge shout out to the members of the official BLackBoy YouTube membership program. Thank you very much for directly supporting the channel, and if you're not part of the program, take a peek at my channel to see the perks that you would get if you join, including fun BLackBoy member specific emojis, exclusive polls, member shoutouts, and membership exclusive YouTube shorts, and of course 24-hour early access to all YouTube videos. Feel free to check it out. So, Philippines versus the world. Let's begin. On Thursday, March 13th, World of Wonder announced via their social media platforms that they would once again be collaborating with Full House Asia Studios Incorporated to produce a spin-off of their wildly successful franchise Drag Race Philippines, entitling it Drag Race Philippines Slaysian Royale, which for all intents and purposes is basically Drag Race Philippines versus the world, marking it as the fourth iteration of International All-Stars, following UK versus the world, Canada versus the world, and Global All-Stars. However, it's not going to be an all-Filipina cast with Filipina queens from franchises all around the world as one would initially speculate, as I did when I first had an idea about Drag Race Philippines versus the world back in January 2023, right after the first season of the franchise finished airing. Rather, all the press releases describe this new spin-off as a quote, all-Asian all-stars, a series not exclusively for Filipino drag artists, but instead for all queens of Asian descent. Joey Nolfi from Entertainment Weekly writes, Slaysian Royale will unite Asian queens from global drag race franchises in one host country, the Philippines. Armando Tinoco of Deadline writes, Slaysian Royale will see fan favorite queens from previous seasons of the Philippines franchise take on Asian queens from across the global franchise in a battle for the crown. And of course, founders of World of Wonder Randy Barbado and Fenton Bailey write, this new version of Drag Race shines a spotlight on Asian drag as never before, celebrating its culture, its history, and creativity in a unique battle royale. So all in all, though the host country is the Philippines, queens of Thai descent, Indonesian descent, Korean descent, etc., are all on the table to compete, which means Jujubee can get third place for a fifth time. No, I'm kidding. Unless. But no, I find this to be an electrifying announcement because there are so many talented Asian artists from around the world that would love this opportunity to be celebrated in a new global light. And as with every All-Stars franchise that's announced, there's a fun little speculation that goes along with it. Who will be cast? Who should be cast? How many queens will compete? And I thought it would be fun if we answer these questions today. I want to speculate and ponder on the cast of Drag Race Philippines Slaysian Royale, discussing who could be cast, who will be cast, who I want to be cast, and why I think so. And to clarify, this isn't a video where I assess the rumored cast of Slaysian Royale, because, well, at the time of filming this video, there is no rumored cast list yet. And even if there were a list, I wouldn't cover it because some people don't like to have that information spoiled to them. Hi everyone, Editing Matthew here. So ironically, quite literally the day after I finished filming this video, the rumored cast for Slaysian Royale leaked to the public. I filmed this video on April 13th and April 14th, and the rumored cast list hit Twitter on April 15th, so it really was the worst timing in the world. And if I'm being honest with you, I'm a little disappointed in myself that I wasn't able to get this video out before the rumored cast list hit the scene, and I was flirting a little bit with the idea of scrapping this video altogether. But you know what, I worked too hard on this and I worked too long on this to throw it out. So you know what, for the time being, just humor me and let's pretend like there is no rumored cast list out there. And for those of you who know who is on the season, don't put it in the comments, don't spoil in the comments, like let's try to keep the vibes going, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, I'm gonna go back to eating my noodles and editing. In addition, I have laid some ground rules that will help inform you why I have chosen some queens over others. Number 1, I will not be including any contestants that are already rumored to be on upcoming seasons of Versus the World. So for example, you won't see on this list. Number 2, I won't be including any queens that have already competed on Versus the World or Global All-Star seasons before. So don't expect to see Marina Summers, LaPhil, Stephanie Prince, or Panjana Heels on this list. I just feel like it would be more fun if we pondered queens who haven't been back before already, except for the American queens, but I will explain that when I get there. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's get started. I love my little English teacher cardigan sweater. Alright class, let's open our copies of Catcher in the Rye to page 53. Beginning first with, of course, the host nation of the Philippines. As there have been 3 seasons of Drag Race Philippines thus far, I have opted to pick only one queen from each season. Don't worry though, they will still be the highest proportion franchise represented on this season, as is the case with every other version of Versus the World so far, except for Canada Versus the World 2. They were weird having as many Canadian queens as American queens on that season, but that's neither here nor there. And the first queen I chose represents such a strong foundation, a pillar for Filipino drag, and that is Silhouette. Right? Silhouette was a contestant on the first season of Drag Race Philippines, where she made it all the way to top 4 before ultimately getting eliminated by Marina Summers in the lip sync for the crown, and admittedly one of the most famous lip sync blowouts in Drag Race history. Can't wait for Jack Fed to make a video about it. Nonetheless, Silhouette was a force on her season. Though she started off in a rough patch, being low in episode 1 and lip syncing for her life in episode 3, she then came back with a vengeance as little as the next episode, where she would kick off a 5-episode top streak, wherein which she would win Drag Race staples such as Snatch Game in episode 6 and the Makeover in episode 8. And though her competitive prowess was a highlight, Silhouette's main story came from her heart as an artist. Silhouette not only was a motherly figure, having been the reason many artists in Manila, many of whom were on the first season of Drag Race Philippines, got their start in drag, she is also evidently educated on and inspired by the queer trailblazers of the Philippines' past. In an exclusive interview Silhouette did with Michael Sweeney at Spill the Tea, she remarked, quote, "My intention was crystal clear. I needed to correct our history, LGBTQIA+ in particular. I needed to show and tell the true story of the real trailblazers and pillars of our drag community in the Philippines that has long been forgotten. And since Drag Race is the Olympics of all gay competitions, it would make sense to tell the story inside the show." This sentiment, as you could see, was heavily reflected in her time competing on Drag Race Philippines. Much of Silhouette's drag was inspired by the queer artists, protesters, and icons that came before her. Look no further than her first appearance on the show in the Turn No She Better Don't runway, which hers was, for all intents and purposes, a love letter to the Paper Dolls. The Paper Dolls were a group of female impersonators managed by the La Young family in the Makati area of Manila that dominated the nightlife scene in the late 1970s, and are the individuals that many people, including Silhouette, cite as the genesis/foundation of modern Filipino drag culture. This was an important piece of Filipino queer history that Silhouette sought to highlight in the first season of Drag Race Philippines. And with a season like Slaysian Royale, which will without a doubt bring in a lot of viewers outside of the Philippines thanks to its international cast, I think she might and probably will bring that same energy to promote and tell queer stories to the world at large. With this in mind, in my opinion, her making an appearance on Slaysian Royale would be a no-brainer. And to represent the Philippines as one of its most famous figures, as one of its fiercest competitors, and as one of its champions for its queer history, I think would have a strong effect and pull on a lot of people. Okay, so the second queen I chose to represent the Philippines was an underappreciated icon, the Miss Congeniality of Season 2, Hannah Beshi. Hannah Beshi, as I mentioned, competed on the second season of Drag Race Philippines, where she finished with 5th/6th place, after having been part of a 3-way lip sync during that season's music video challenge with Arizona Brandy and OV. the latter of which was eliminated with her. Hanabeshi never won a challenge, but she was no stranger to topping. Oh, wait. In fact, right before her elimination, she enjoyed a 3-episode top streak, and in my opinion, had a very strong case for winning the acting challenge in episode 6. And beyond the challenges themselves, her stamp on the season was palpable, where she certainly caught the attention of her fellow competitors who voted her to be the miscongeniality of her season. And as a viewer, there are many things about Hanabeshi that endeared me to her too. And not just because she's a mutual, hi Hannah, but in reality, I myself can say I was particularly endeared by her story of hiding her queerness from her conservative parents, out of fear of being disowned, which she shared briefly on her season, to the point that she didn't even tell her parents that she was competing on Drag Race. Afterwards, in an interview with Marianne Bardines at ABS-CBN, she disclosed that this exact situation is what led her to drag. In preparation for the worst case scenario of being potentially kicked out, she knew she had to support herself and therefore started looking for work. Drag was an outlet she found where she could. I didn't expect to be a drag queen, she said. As I got older, I discovered what a drag queen is, what drag is, and how to perform. That's when I said, that's what I wanted to do. And this is a story that unfortunately is so familiar in the queer community, where the dejection and fear of rejection growing up in conservative households drives queer people to find solace in their art and their community. Thankfully though, Hannah's story ended happily, with her parents supporting her journey. And I think there is still a lot of power in that queer search for independence. And it's developed who Hanabeshi is as a person and an artist. I think Hanabeshi is an underrated icon with a lot of untapped potential and harbors such a pleasant disposition. An opportunity like Slaysian Royale could give her the break that she deserves. The third and final hi Bob Ross. The third and final queen from the Philippines that I chose was a breakout star from her season that almost went home first. Angel. Angel was a finalist on the 3rd season of Drag Race Philippines, where she, similar to Silhouette, finished with 3rd/4th place alongside Your Tita Baby. Her biological sister Maxi would later go on to win the season. Angel experienced a whirlwind while competing on Philippines 3. For those of you who aren't aware, Angel was almost the pork chop of the season, having almost been eliminated in episode 2, but then was part of a shocking and endearing last-minute double shantay. I made a YouTube video where I covered that in depth. Feel free to give it a watch if you want more details about that. I just spilled some water. After a few safe placements though, she would later go on to win the season's Snatch Game, portraying famous Filipino literary character Maria Clarla from Jose Rizal's novel Touch Me Not. She'd also win the penultimate episode's remix challenge with her iconic verse and performance to Slay Akla, one of the best remixes ever, don't at me. Though her run was cut short at the finale, Angel was still one of the shining lights on the season, which is saying a lot because this is one of the best casts of Drag Race ever. However, her story admittedly was heavily defined by how it related to the season's winner, Maxi. And as I surmised in my Philippines 3 video, a queen's storyline focusing on how it affects another queen's storyline is not necessarily a bad thing. But I would love to see Angel compete on a season without Maxi to see how she might shine on her own. We saw glimpses of how she was able to break through with her 2 challenge wins, but Slaysian Royale will be the perfect chance for her to define her legacy. She'd also be a damn notable threat because of her prowess in comedy and performance-based challenges. Plus, she's a fan favorite and a darling of the judges panel, as she should be, so if she's on, expect to be in it for the long haul. And yeah, those are my 3 choices to represent the Philippines. You'll notice that I didn't choose queens that might be more obvious picks to return. You know, the first queens from Drag Race Philippines you might think of to come back and return. You know, like the Kianas, the Miss Jade So's, the Venus Deluxes, which, yes, all of whom are amazing artists and I think should come back under any circumstances. But there are certain queens you watch on the show where you just know they're meant for a RuPaul season, you know? Like, remember when Marina Summers was on Philippines 1 and we all kind of like collectively knew that she was going to go on to a RuPaul season, and then 3 months later she was on the UK versus the World 2 cast? You know, it's like just that feeling. I have that feeling with Kiana, I have it with Miss Jade So, and I have it with Venus Deluxe. And let me be clear, I will take those 3 back in any capacity. So if they're on the season, that would be great. But I chose to omit them from my list because I think World of Wonder would be silly not to cast them on a RuPaul version of International All-Stars. Now that we've speculated about the Philippines, I'd now like to move on to Drag Race's most prominent franchise, Drag Race US. Before I reveal my choices, I'd like to clarify that I have indeed only chosen queens that have been back on All Stars already, which rules Drag Race US as an exception from the rule that I established at the start of the video. I made this decision because there have been no US queens at the time of recording this video that their first time back was for an international All Stars like versus the World or Global All Stars. Though I would love for it to happen, it probably won't. Because like, for international All Stars, American girls just do it for funsies, you know what I mean? For them, it's a hobby to do in retirement in their old age. I mean, just ask Alyssa. I'm just kidding. Okay, but I would love to give some honorable mentions to some Asian queens in the US franchise who haven't been back, who I have chosen to leave off of this list, such as Rock'em Sakura, Kim Chi, Anitra, and of course, the very namesake of this international spinoff, the Slaysian diva of LA, Joella. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, who did I pick? Well guys, with a franchise like Slaysian Royale, we have to consider that we may be graced with the very presence of the villain for all ages, Gia Gunn.
Just landed like fresh tilapia.
Well, what you want to do is not necessarily what you're gonna do.
Oh, it's so good.
I saw you on Botched.
Yeah, girl.
Yes, you did.
I just saw a monster. I said, that's my sister.
Gia Gunn was a Japanese-American contestant that competed on the 6th season of RuPaul's Drag Race where she placed 10th, and later returned to the 4th season of All Stars where she finished with 8th place. Also, for the sake of thoroughness, I should note that she also competed on the 2nd season of The Switch where she was runner-up, but like, who cares about The Switch? Gia Gunn is most remembered for her, chaotic legacy on the show. In short, she was a menace. Gia Gunn is one of the most notorious villains, not just in Drag Race history, but in reality television history, period. To the point that many people are fan casting her in the upcoming 3rd season of House of Villains. Gia Gunn is one of those drag artists that is not necessarily there to win, but rather they acknowledge that they are there first and foremost to make a television program. Good TV, essentially. Always willing to stir the pot, never afraid of confrontation, and always has the audacity to say something in order to get a soundbite, and it works every single time, mama. How many times have you said to your friends, well, what you want to do is not necessarily what you're gonna do? How many times have you said to your friends, you guys look good, or I didn't quite cough like a man, but that was all birthed by Gia Gunn. The doors she's opened. And sometimes when I scroll through social media, I even see her infamous fight from the Switch 2 still being referenced by Spanish-speaking fans.
Mujer, sweetie, mujer.
Yo soy un hombre. Yo soy un hombre.
The point I'm trying to make is that Gia Gunn is reality TV gold, and the iconography she's produced and the lexicon she's cultivated extends well beyond the show itself, and her potential to create even more chaos on the set of Drag Race Philippines is boundless. The second queen I picked to represent the United States is a little less chaotic and might actually be more of a rejuvenating kindness on the season.
Shay Collet, you always say that you come to slay. How hard are you gonna slay this season?
Is that a question or a read?
No, it's a read. I'm trying my best, you guys.
Angina was a Filipino-American contestant that competed on the very first season of RuPaul's Drag Race where she finished with 5th place, the original 5th place icon. She then returned about 11 years later for All Stars 5 where she finished with 9th. Angina is one of the OG threats of Drag Race, having dominated the first 4 episodes of season 1 and really set the foundation for how a queen should perform in challenges as the show was still finding its footing. And her elimination on that season is still controversial to this day, 16 years later. When she returned to All Stars 5, many eyes were on her because of this legacy of her competitive prowess, as well as the fact that she was one of the few season 1 girls that hadn't been back at all. Even BB got a chance to come back a second time before Angina did. However, she wasn't able to meet expectations and was unfortunately second out on that season, which I believe can be attributed to her not being in the right headspace and succumbing to the decade-long fan pressure for her to come back. It was incredible to be the last one to walk into All Stars 5, she said in an interview with Vulture staff writer Rebecca Alter, because I think everyone, including myself, has been anticipating this moment for so long. But it was nerve-wracking as hell to walk in and then turning to my left and seeing the competition, like, oh shit. I think, however, given a new headspace and a new environment where she can come back in full force, surrounded by a crew that can appreciate her culture and how it inspires her drag, will absolutely make Ongina a good representation and good choice for Slaysian Royale. Because she truly is a trailblazer in the world of drag, having helped shape the global landscape of drag and bringing Asian representation to the forefront in an era when it was still pretty scarce. Not to mention, she is closely related to Drag Race Philippines itself, having done a World of Wonder sanctioned spin-off of Fashion Photo Review with Rock'em Sakura that is solely dedicated to Drag Race Philippines. So it would be a fun, nice callback to see her return as one of the franchise's first proponents and as someone who is closely tied to its brand. Now let us move on to the other major Asian franchise in the RuPaul Cinematic Universe, Drag Race Thailand, the inaugural franchise of Drag Race's global domination. And I have chosen two queens, the first of whom I have chosen from Season 2. Vanda Miss Joaquim. Vanda Miss Joaquim is a Malay Singaporean queen who competed on the second season of Drag Race Thailand in 2019, where she finished with 4th/5th place alongside her Season 2 sister, Bandit, RIP. Vanda is a legendary figure in Drag Race Thailand's legacy, having been one of the premier queens that people choose to represent the franchise in their Versus the World/Global All-Stars fan casts. I've posted tweets and TikToks about having her back ever since Versus the World first became an idea, which is apt because being a Singaporean queen, she is one of the queens that fans were sure was fluent in English. But it's not her fluency in English that attracted the fandom to her. It's just that she would be a damn good queen to have on. Vanda Miss Joaquim on her time on Thailand 2 was a workhorse queen and pushed through and excelled in many challenges despite having not spoken Thai. And she even outperformed her Thai competitors 2 episodes in a row, winning the challenges in episode 5 as team captain and episode 6. In fact, her speech during the pageant in episode 6 is still one of the most iconic and moving challenge performances from Drag Race Thailand in my opinion.
I mean, to all my sisters out there, you're not alone. We're all in this together. Stay united. Love each other. Be kind to one another. Thank you.
And that is a legacy that still follows her even now, 6 years later. Since her time on the show, she remains a workhorse queen, having an active career performing at Thai mainstay bars such as House of Heels and Stranger Bar. I think Vanda would undoubtedly bring the same energy, determination, and resolution to Slaysian Royale. Even in an environment... God, there it is again. Okay, I gotta edit the script. Even in an environment that may not be familiar to her, I trust that she would attack challenges with the best ferocity she can. And if she does, she can give the other girls a run for her money and truly prove herself as one of the main players of the season. Dare I say she'd even be finale material. The second queen I chose comes from the 3rd season of Drag Race Thailand, and if you were paying attention to the beginning of this video, you know exactly who it is. ZP is a Thai performer and is the mother, the icon, the legend of Drag Race Thailand 3, where she finished as runner-up to the season's winner, Frankie Wonga. She dominated the early half of the season, having won 2 challenges within the first 4 episodes, the most notable of which was her sensational performance to Sip 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 in that season's Girl Group Challenge. After episode 4 though, ZP would admittedly never find the same footing again, when she faced a bit of a stumble when she was low then bottom in the last 2 episodes of the season, and almost got eliminated in episode 9 before Pangina decided last minute that it would be a double Shantae. And in a season where queens like Godland and Frankie Wonga had exponentially upward endgames, it was just hard for ZP to reclaim the zenith she once had. That did not dissuade my faith in her though. I was team ZP through and through. Even to the point where I still think she should have won the whole season despite Frankie Wonga having a better track record than her. We could get into that, but I don't feel like unpacking Thailand 3 right now. Either way though, I was so team ZP that I wanted her back immediately, expeditiously, instantaneously. And lo and behold, 5 months after her season finished airing, here comes Slaysian Royale with a perfect opportunity for her to come back. And if she doesn't want to do it, I don't care. I am casting her for selfish reasons, because to me, for me, para me, it's not Slaysian Royale without ZP. And that rhymed. I should write the girl group verse, but it'll never be as good as ZP's girl group verse. Now let's move on to Canada's Drag Race, which has a plentiful pool of Asian queens that we could pick from, such as Kimmy Couture, Suki Doll, Minnie Wang, and even South Asian queens like Bombay. But I will be placing my money on the icon of Canada's Drag Race Season 4, Aurora Matrix. Aurora Matrix was a Chinese-Canadian contestant that, as I mentioned, competed on the franchise's 4th season, where she finished as a runner-up to Venus. She was simply a fan favorite and frontrunner of the cast, having won both the season's Girl Group Challenge and the Rusical. As a matter of fact, she was the only queen that season to win more than one challenge, which I find fascinating. So you can easily surmise that she would be one of the biggest and most threatening threats on Slaysian Royale, and a well-connected threat at that. Because in the time since her season, Aurora has been working, both within Canada and abroad. She even had quite the stint in the States, where it seemed like for a solid month, she was collaborating consistently with American creators, such as Delta Work, Joseph Shepard, and perhaps the most mainstream, collaborating with the YouTube channel Smosh, one of the biggest channels to ever grace this platform. The point I'm trying to make is that since season 4, Aurora is getting her name out there and maximizing her time off the show. And it's very clearly paying off, as she's one of the premier and most followed queens of Canada's Drag Race. This reputation will do wonders for her in Slaysian Royale, as she can easily point to it as a point of growth and how she made her mark beyond the borders of Canada. Not to mention, she is the blueprint of what Slaysian Royale is. A celebration of Asian culture as never before seen on World of Wonder. As a matter of fact, I found this interview she did at DragCon UK 2025 with Girl Global, and I thought it would be fun to comment on.
2025, I want to travel more.
Like the Philippines?
I really want to execute more Asian looks.
Like perchance a Slaysian runway?
This is the year to do it.
Like the same year they're filming Slaysian Royale? Yeah, that's what I thought. Just kidding, but I'd love to have her on nonetheless. Next up, we are moving down under, where we are picking a queen to represent Drag Race Down Under, which is a franchise that admittedly has a couple of great options that we could consider for Slaysian Royale, such as Faux Fur, who is Vietnamese New Zealander, and Carna Ford, who is Filipino Australian. But the queen who I chose is doing it for all the Asians in the race. Ivory Glaze. Ivory Glaze is a Chinese Dutch-Australian queen that competed on the 3rd season of RuPaul's Drag Race Down Under. She would finish the season with 9th place and would subsequently become the season's Miss Congeniality. Self-appointed, of course. Ivory Glaze, well, certainly tried her best on Down Under 3. No, I'm kidding, but if you go just based on her track record, well... She lip-synced for her life in episode 1, and then after being told she was up for elimination in episode 2, fainted, causing RuPaul to postpone the lip sync to the beginning of the 3rd episode, giving her a weird, kind of purgatory-esque track record. Her time on the show was particularly haunted by admittance that drag was not her full-time career, and that, as the producers told, hindered how she performed in the competition. Mind you, I specifically said as the producers told, as it was edited, you know what I mean? Which in my opinion, RuPaul and Michelle sort of like unnecessarily hounded her, as if the expectations for drag have skyrocketed and therefore become so expensive, and the show itself isn't even a guarantee that a queen can pursue drag full time. So the whole moment just like kind of read a little bit tone deaf on their part for me, but whatever. Although her time on the show was not ideal, her time off the show indeed has made her a legacy that many queens wish they had. During the airing of the remainder of her season, she gained a lot of traction with her unaired runway looks, many of which caused many fans to grieve that we only got to see her for 2/3 episodes. And post-season, she developed a career for herself making wigs for queens in Sydney and the surrounding area on the east coast of Australia. She even created some wigs for Queen Kong on Global All-Stars. So her career is not limited to her 2 measly episodes on Drag Race, and it shouldn't be, because the talent of an artist should not be constricted to how they performed on one television show. Ivory Glaze is first-hand proof of that. But even still, that gives her a ready-to-wear storyline that could benefit her on a season like Slaysian Royale. She may return as an early out on an underrated franchise, but that gives her more of a reason to come back with a ferocity that she didn't have on her original season. Because she knows her worth, she knows what she can do, and she knows she's not constricted to one placement on one bad slip-up. And if anybody in the RuPaul Cinematic Universe is going to celebrate that, it's going to be the Drag Race Philippines' Judges channel. The Drag Race Philippines Judges panel. There we go. And I've had the pleasure of interacting with Ivory Glaze online many times, and she's truly a kind soul, and I would just want this for her more than anything.
Now you might be shocked I saved the
Next franchise for my 9th pick, because it's such a big franchise, but it's because I really didn't plan how I was going to order this video at all. But whatever. Anyways, but we're moving on to Drag Race UK. Once again, like Down Under, we have a few notable choices here that can represent the franchise in Slaysian Royale. Of particular note, River Medway, who I would love to see back. But we're going a little further in the past to look at a queen all the way from season 1. Something Wong. Something Wong is a Chinese Vietnamese English artist who placed 7th on the premiere season of RuPaul's Drag Race UK. She never won a challenge and lip-synced for her life twice in episodes 3 and 4 before being eliminated by Crystal. Similar to Ivory Glaze, Something Wong does not have the most enviable track record, which is especially tragic because, if I recall correctly, she was one of the most anticipated names on that season. Like, I remember very vividly when I was a freshman in college and the first season of Drag Race UK had its promo drop, and my friends texted me and said, oh my god, the Vivian, Something Wong, and Davina DeCampo were all on the cast. You know, like, her name was up there. She was one of the big players pre-season. And Something was often cited as people's early picks to make it to the end. But at the time, Something Wong still needed some time in the oven. And it's been 6 years since she was last on. Her, Vanda, and Gia are the 3 queens that have the longest duration from the time of their original season to now that I put on this list. And I think it's more than a welcome time to reintroduce Something Wong to the world stage. Her mug stamped Body T, and her call for her return, long overdue. For my 10th and final pick, this one is a little bit of a wild card, but after I introduce her, you might be convinced because she is one of my faves ever since her promo dropped. Representing Drag Race France, Kitty Space. Kitty Space is a Vietnamese queen from the 2nd season of Drag Race France, one of the best seasons of the entire RuPaul Cinematic Universe, don't at me, where she finished with 9th place. Kitty Space admittedly did not have the best showing on her season, having lip-synced for her life in episodes 1 and 3 before ultimately getting eliminated in the latter. But as we kind of touched on with Ivory Glaze and Something Wong, as well as a message I try to reiterate as much as I can throughout all the videos in my channel, a track record does not a queen make. A poor track record or a not favorable placement does not determine the capacity for art that a queen who competes on the show possesses. And Kitty Space is an artist, true to her form. Avant-garde, conceptual, experimental. She never shied away from venturing beyond the typical art form of drag, exercising freedoms in makeup and fashion that we haven't really seen yet in modern seasons of the show. I mean, even though we didn't get to see a lot of her runways on Drag Race France, like Ivory, her unaired runways redefined generations. Look at her collection she brought and you'll see how I find her to be conceptual in many ways in her form. If a lot of these looks had made it to the runway, I strongly believe that she would be heralded as the runway queen of the season. And that's an opportunity I would love to see revisited if she gets on Slaysian Royale, because her runways would absolutely devour, especially on a franchise like Drag Race Philippines, which is known for its out-of-the-box runways. And Kitty's journey outside of the show has been beautiful and poignant. In July of 2024, Kitty Space came out as a trans woman on her social media platforms. "I'm so happy about coming out as trans," she wrote. "It was hard to hide. But today I want to live free, be happy being me." This story, like many other stories that I've brought up this video, is beautiful. And I want Kitty to be afforded the opportunity to tell it on a global stage. On a stage that would carry her story to anybody abroad who needs to hear it and perhaps feel motivated or moved by it, as I have. When I was in Paris in 2023 for the finale of Drag Race France Season 2, I had the pleasure of speaking with Kitty Space in person at the after party. And I, for one, can attest to how kind she is, how humble yet confident she is, and how secure she is. And not to mention how beautiful she is, and that is Kitty Space. Beautiful. And as one of her supporters, World of Wonder and Full House Asia Production Studios would be idiots for not casting her. So that's my cast. Silhouette, Hannah Beshi, Angel, Gia Gunn, Angina, Vanda Miss Joaquim, ZP, Aurora Matrix, Ivory Glaze, Something Wong, and Kitty Space. 10 queens representing 7 franchises. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list, and there were many queens I could have included and wanted to include, such as Anime Wong from Thailand 1, Madame Yoko from Belgique 2, and Kimchi from US 8. You know, there's like a plethora, but I decided to limit myself to 10 queens. But these are the 10 that I wanted back the most and am locking in for Slaysian Royale. I would love to hear your your thoughts on my cast, as well as the queens you would like to see back. But nonetheless, I find Slaysian Royale to be such a rousing opportunity and format for the franchise, which I also think can be revitalizing for the show all around, not just for Drag Race Philippines. The RuPaul cinematic universe, especially the Western franchises, has faced some criticisms within recent years for how little they celebrate Asian drag. You know, there's a running joke on Drag Race US that if there's an Asian queen on the cast of Drag Race, you can expect at least one of them to go home within the first 5 episodes. But Slaysian Royale is an opportunity to celebrate Asian drag for all it's worth, without adhering or kneeling to Western standards of what drag is or should be. Because there are a multitude of talented artists that did not get their dues on franchises around the world. So this is another chance to be uplifted, hear that mixed Chanel uplifted, by a community that can celebrate them. And I just can't wait for it to finally hit WOW Presents Plus this year. But yeah, this was a long video, so thank you all very much for watching. As a reminder, feel free to check out my YouTube membership program. I'd love to have you there. But no sweat if not, even just liking this video and subscribing to the channel helps a million, and uplifts my channel a lot to get you more videos like this one. But as always, remember, I am just a silly little gay person talking on the internet.